மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.
We have seen the main plan for the pieces when working against the rook and the pawn. In reality, this is not always happening. More important for us, and the first and the foremost thing when we are having the light pieces is to try and to coordinate their efforts. Usually the pieces are stronger if they are coordinated, and the game that I would like to show you, the case is just like that. Grischuk with the white pieces against Morozevich from the Town Memorial. Black has just played queen c8 in this situation. His pieces were not doing much on the queen side, so he's trying to bring them in the center with knight d5, queen to f5, bishop g7. If he manages to do all these things, then he will have obvious advantage. White needed to hurry up and to free his rook. As indicated by Stoll, he could have done this with the move queen e4, with a couple of beautiful lines that can follow. In case of bishop takes c5, there will be d4, bishop to f8, and now g7 is very strong, with the idea to sacrifice this rook, but to give enough power for his pieces. And say here the easiest draw is queen to e7 check, and after that it is a perpetual check like that. But rook g1 was also leading to a draw. In this line, instead of bishop c5, white can try also to play other moves, knight d5 for example, but then most likely the game will also end up in a draw. For instance, after g7, which is an excellent move, f5, and now strong is rook h8 check, followed by queen e5 check, and this one will also end up in a draw. Let me just finish the nice line that Stoll is giving. King to g6, rook g7. Once again white is sacrificing the rook, but in return he is bringing the opponent's king out of the pawn chain. King h5 is the only move not to get checkmated, and here everything ends in a draw as white has too many threats against this king, and black will have to sacrifice back the material, which at the end would lead to a draw endgame. e3, b3, b3, rook e1, king g6, etc. This endgame is analyzed, and the conclusion is that white is holding the draw. But what happened in the game was that white waited for just one move. He played the logical rook c1, the seemingly logical rook c1. Again, he's trying to give some additional support to the pawn. The threat is g7, and after that, of course, black cannot take the rook because this pawn will be promoted. So this is really very strong threat, but it is black to move. It is black to move when he manages to bring his forces into the action immediately with queen f5 check. Now note that the endgame that can arise after this moves is not the one that we were looking before, in which a rook and a pawn are better than two light pieces. Here we have a different case. The rook on h7 is excluded from the game, so we can say that this rook is equal to the bishop on g7, and basically black is playing with an extra knight on the other side of the board versus the rook, so he should be easily winning by advancing the pawn, and after that bringing this knight to unblock that pawn later. This one is not working for white. He tried king e1, but now we have another tempo winning move. This is rook e8. All the black pieces are coordinated easily. In case of queen d4, now black can continue with knight d5. For instance, e4, and now first of all bishop to g7 to block the rook, and after that he can save his pieces. And once again we will have a typical situation in which three black pieces are fighting against two white pieces. What happened in the game after rook e8 was queen g3, knight d6. Unfortunately for white, he doesn't have time to escape now with the rook because there is knight f4, threatening too many things. The pawn on e2, the one on d3, and above all this king. So he played another move. He played e4, but then after queen takes c5, not only did black won a pawn, more importantly he managed to lock the rook on h7. This pawn is no longer a danger for the second player, and the game ended after rook g2, queen e5, queen e3, rook d8, king e1 c5, rook takes h6, the last try, hoping for bishop takes h6, queen takes h6 with some chances for attack after queen h7 and g7, but black calmly reacted with knight f4, and he forced resignation in this situation. So remember, if you are having the light pieces, look for ways to coordinate them, and after that you're usually the better side.
மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. தேங்க்யூ.